Nora Speaks is a weekly podcast that tugs at the soul and consciousness of the Black community. With show topics such as youth empowerment, education, women's impact, and civic engagement, Nora Speaks challenges the listener to not only join the movement, but be the movement. On the show, you'll learn from insightful guests who have demonstrated capacity in these fields and more, and I'm your host, Nora Muhammad. Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast, and I am your host, Nora Muhammad. Thank you for joining me in this episode of the podcast. If you are a repeat listener, I want to thank you. Thank you for being a subscriber and coming back week after week and listening to the ideas and thoughts that are shared here on the podcast. I know that there's so much content streaming on television, on cable, and there's so much that's competing for your attention. And that you would come by and give Nora Speaks a listen. I truly appreciate that. And if you have not already done so, I encourage you to let others know about the podcast. You can share it. You can share your favorite episode. You can text it to a friend, or you can share it on social media. As always, I look forward to your feedback and to your comments. Now let's get into this episode. This episode is titled Aunt Beauty. Aunt Beauty is my aunt. In fact, she's my mother's aunt. She's my grandmother's sister. And I was in a library recently for work, and I was getting some stuff done. But when I first walked in, it's a library that I hadn't been in quite some time. And as I walked in, I was just kind of overwhelmed with nostalgia, thinking and remembering about the first time I ever walked into a library. And my Aunt Beauty is the one who took me there. And she would take my brother, she would take me, my cousins, and we would go to the library, especially in the summer when school was out. And I'll just say that when I was a young child, we didn't have cable television. We didn't have television streaming 24 hours a day. There was a time where television turned off. We also certainly did not have the internet, the World Wide Web, not the way that we have it today, and definitely not YouTube. So the idea of smartphones to keep us occupied was certainly not even a thought. So, we would read, right? As children, we would play outside. We would read books, and we got to watch a little television. And I remember during these summer months, we would go to the library early in the afternoon or late morning, and we would pick out our books. And I remember us having to earn television time based on the number of pages that we read in our book. And going to the library was such an exciting time. The discovery of a new book, and then learning to appreciate series. I remember I used to love Encyclopedia Brown books, and those of you who used to read those books, you know how enjoyable they were. And of course, there was Judy Blume and all of that. But those were books that I read once I was in my elementary school, and we would get those books out of the school library. But, just going to that little tiny library in the town that I grew up in and being taken by my aunt, I was flooded with those memories as I entered into the library just last week. And thinking about this aunt of mine, and, this episode isn't necessarily about the library, but that memory of the library, or that aura that I had when I walked in, it really made me reflect on how she has impacted my life. And I thought, let me talk about my Aunt Beauty on my podcast. It's my show. I can talk about what I want, and I want to talk about my Aunt Beauty. And so, just thinking about the memory and the love of libraries that she instilled in me, that when I was raising my children, we would also go to libraries. We would go to libraries to pick out books. Libraries, you could go pick out movies. You could check out music, and also to do homework. And I wanted my children to love the library like I did. Now, I don't know if they love the library, but I certainly know that they do enjoy reading books, and right, we want our children to enjoy reading. And so the kind of person that she was, and how just walking into the library immediately makes me think about her. And so I thought about what other ways did she impact me? And I love to help other people. In fact, my middle name Zahira, it means one who assists or supports, helps others. And that is something that I also learned from her very early on. I can recall getting up on Saturday mornings after cleaning the house and going to Mr. Peoples' house. And Mr. Peoples was a friend of my great-grandfather, who was her father. And Mr. Peoples was a man who lived alone, and he was a double-leg amputee. And on Saturdays, we would go to his home, and she would clean up. She would clean him up. She would clean up his home. I think she used to, cook or prepare, some food for him. I'm not really sure if he had support. I imagine he probably had a visiting nurse during the week, but on Saturdays we would go, and it was just known that we were just going to go help. And she is a helper. She's a helper by profession. In her professional life, she took on a career that was a helper or caregiver. And even just personally, she would help other people. And that is who I am. That's what I love to do. I love to be of assistance to others. And I have, three ladies that I call my Holy Trinity, who live in my town. And I like to check on them, and if we have special events, I'm loading up my car and picking up my gals, and we're riding off to our meetings or to our events. And I realize, it's not just the library, but it's so much about how I define my life was influenced by my Aunt Beauty. And she is such a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I don't want you to think that she's just, just some, sweet, soft old lady. I mean, she's got fire to her too. And if she's listening to this, she might say, and I'm not old. But she's got fire to her too. I mean, she's so protective. And so don't cross her. She's just not that one. And so it just makes me think about how when we are young, how those around us impact us in ways that they may not expect, and we may not expect until we're a little bit older and we're reflecting on our own, personal preferences and the things that we like to do, or how we raised, our children. And even I remember, very early, our phone number, our address, being able to write it and memorize it very early on. And, there's something that we had to do. And I remember the same thing with my sons, very, very early on. They had to know how to write their address, know address, phone number, know it by heart. Sometimes with cell phones in this modern age, so much of that is, something we don't pay attention to, because you just have it programmed, you have it stored. But what happens if that child is without that phone? But just in general, when you're a parent and you're thinking about, what principles you want to use to raise your children, I think it's natural that you reflect back on those experiences that you've had as a child. And I had some beautiful, wonderful, lovely influences in my childhood. Maybe one day I'll talk about my grandpa, who many call Uncle Johnny. One day I'll talk about him more on the show. But I wanted to just, highlight my Aunt Beauty. By the way, Aunt Beauty is not her actual name. That is a name that, cutely enough, she gave herself when my nephew was born, when my sister had, the first baby in the family of our generation, that is. And when my aunt saw my nephew for the first time, and she was holding him as a baby, and, she said, and by the way, I'm Aunt Beauty. And so that just kind of stuck. I thought it was beautiful. She's a beautiful person. So, her phone or her name program in my phone is Aunt Beauty. And so that is what she goes by now. But she, just a lovely person and just had such a lovely influence on my life. And I pray to Allah, God, that the young people that I'm around, my children too, of course, but even others can reflect on Nora, Sister Nora, and will have some memory or some moment or some idea, some principle that I shared with them that enhances their life, that edifies them, or something that when they get to a certain age, they can reach back to and say, I remember when Sister Nora showed me this. I remember when Sister Nora told me this. I remember when Sister Nora took me here or took me there. So let's be thoughtful about the impacts that we're making in the lives of young people. We want them to be able to have, an enriching childhood to pull from as they are navigating adult lives. And because of my Aunt Beauty, I certainly have that myself. So, listening, the listeners of the Nora Speaks audience, you got to hear a little bit about my Aunt Beauty, somebody that we continue to call, right? If there's a problem, if there's an issue. In fact, I called her just last week to kind of give her an update on some things that I'm paying attention to that I just, wanted her to know, because she's like the family headquarters in a way as well, so anything important needs to go to Aunt Beauty so that somebody can kind of, file that information in the family record. And she's just that one. And I'm so grateful to her. I'm grateful to the love that she has given me, that she gives my family, she's family headquarters, and everything comes through her and by her. And I'm so thankful to God that I had such a beautiful person in my life. And so we can also be beautiful people in the lives of those that we come across, especially those vulnerable young people, and give them something to pull out when they're older and have to make adult choices, have to make adult decisions, and they themselves have to guide young people. Let us all be like Aunt Beauty. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Until next time, stay in peace.
We were brought here as a piece of property, and to keep that piece of property, it is to not allow the property to know the value of the property. What I mean by that, if you had known the history of yourself, you would not have been made a slave. And you won't be a slave now if you have a knowledge of yourself. It's hard to enslave a person that have equal knowledge with you. You just can't do it. And so this knowledge of yourself is the thing that will free you from what you have been suffering from.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Nora Speaks podcast. Be on the lookout for a new episode coming at you fresh next week. And as always, if you want to learn more about me and the work that I do, visit my website, noramahammed.com. Or if you have a listener question, email me at info@noraspeaks.com. You can also follow the Nora Speaks podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Nora Speaks Podcast. I'll be sure to include links in the show notes. If this show has value to you, please subscribe, rate, and review, and share it with family and friends. And be sure to check out previous episodes. And remember, don't just join the movement, be the movement. Stay in peace.